You're listening to the Sports Therapy Association podcast. Let's talk about.
Okay, so hopefully we are live into the STA Facebook group. I hope so. I think I've pressed the right buttons. So welcome everyone. My name is Mike, and I'm standing in today for Matt, who's on holiday. He's picked a good week for it. It's very nice weather, and as you can tell by my slightly sunburnt face, fell asleep in the garden over the weekend. So pick the perfect day for me to host, Gary. Thank you. Thanks for that. So this is a topic that we've been talking about for quite some time. We are definitely live. Catherine's in. Good. Yeah, I know. Hold on. Can you hear that? I don't know whether you guys can hear the music. That's a shame. I've got my little button with the music on there. Never mind. It's a topic Gary and I have talked about quite a lot, and because there's lots of different reasons for the issues that graduate sports therapists have with finding work after they graduate, and we're going to just explore some of those topics as we go through. So we've got Dan with us as well. Thanks for joining us, Dan. And hopefully we should have Beth with us as well. We've had a few technical issues getting Beth on, but hopefully we'll be able to get her in as well. So Gary, I know you've had quite a few questions from graduate sports therapists when they do graduate or they're just about to graduate, which obviously sparked this conversation. So do you want to just talk through some of the things that you've heard from some of our members?
Yeah. So, I mean, what happened last week was quite telling about the industry, really. We had somebody join on one of our lockdown offers, you could join as a student member for £1, or a member for £10 for 2 months and just try us out. So they joined, and within the 2-month period, I got an email saying, I really don't know what to do. Can't get clients in this industry. There are no jobs. Can you give me some advice? So we spent some time on the phone. We talked about marketing strategies, about making a connection with potential clients, about exploiting existing networks, and really going on your expertise in a particular field before advertising to the sort of general marketplace. Mm-hmm. And literally within 4 weeks, I'd had another email saying, I want to cancel my membership. I can't find work in this industry, and I'm going to go and work at Tesco's or something along those lines. So it kind of resonated with me a little bit because of the conversations. And I speak to 20 odd members per day. And a lot of what I'm being asked is, where do I look for jobs? Mm-hmm. Conversely, I get lots of physios messaging me saying, look, I want to take on a sports therapist. What should I be paying them? What can they do? What's the remit? So I just thought that there's a lack of information out there, and hence as you said, you and I have spoken about this several times. But interestingly, and I don't know if you saw it, and I did mention it to you this morning, Jack Chew, who does his Chewing It Over lunchtime talks, he had one with the chairman of the Society of Sports Therapists. And one of the interesting things I took away from the conversation was that when sports therapy as an industry was incepted in around about 1990, it was started, if you like, by a physiotherapist. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of relationships being fostered and developed. But interestingly, 2 years later, when sports therapy was sort of in its infancy, what happened was that if you wanted to work in sport, the powers that be said that if you want to be working in sport, you need to be a chartered physiotherapist. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, we've got the sports therapy industry growing and trying to develop. And on the other hand, by the same powers that be are saying, well, but if you want to work in professional sport, you need to be a chartered physio. So from day one, I think there was a bit of a conflict of interest there. And I'm not going to criticise anybody for the work they do in the industry, but I just don't think things tally up. And Jack's conversation went on to discuss regulation and how that might or might not be appropriate for our industry. So my cogs are turning it, during the night time, and I'm thinking, what can we do to make the industry more appealing? And one of the things would be, is there an opportunity for employment at the end of a degree course? Mm-hmm. So one of the questions is, and you, Mike, might be able to answer this, coming from an academic background, is there or are there any sort of false promises made by universities that are, trying to market a sports therapy degree, to the wider sort of population, university wannabes, that, if you do complete this degree, you're going to be getting a £50,000 a year job working at Everton? Does that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, good point. I think what I'll do, I'll just bring in Dan. Let me just bring him in. Hopefully, is it going to work? Okay, Dan's just go. Here we go. So Dan, just give us a bit of a background about your route in to sports therapy, and what did you do? You did a degree in sports therapy, is that right?
So my background's a little bit dotted, I suppose. I first came in as a sports scientist, a graduate sports scientist. I had no real interest in sports therapy at that particular time. And then I left, I did a PGCE, I went into education. And then I just started to find a bit more interested in injury and rehab, I suppose. Hence, I went back to university to do a master's in sports therapy. Now, I chose sports therapy over physio because at the time there was lots of chat about regulations or becoming a regulated industry, and I specifically remember that message being sold quite well on the back of the course. And I'm not suggesting people were lying. Because there was a lot of chat about it at the time, why would you not use that as a bit of a marketing tool to sell a course? Now, it turns out many years down the line, it's still not regulated, unfortunately. And I think sports therapy is just always seen as the second best. And it annoys me to say that because I am a sports therapist by trade. And often I've sat at home and considered, do I just bite the bullet and pay for a physio degree just to call myself a physio, just so I'm not second best to a physio? But I suppose that comes into, yes, I definitely think there are less opportunities. Well, I know there are. I've been there and I've done that, and I've been second best to physiotherapists who may or may not have been better at the job than me. But that's just the fact at the time. But then I've carved my way into the industry as a self-employed person who's built a business. And I generally don't think, and you could say this about anybody in any industry, I generally don't think it's for everybody, regardless of whether you are an excellent therapist or not. If you're not set out to be businessy and hardworking and putting yourself out there, sometimes putting your head on the block on occasions, but if you're not willing to do that, sometimes I just don't think you're ever going to have a business. Does that make sense, kind of?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because there's no focus on that in the degree program. It's all geared from the degree that I used to teach on. It was all geared around joining a team and being part of a pitch side team that dealt with acute injuries pitch side and then rehabbing players after injury. And as you said, Gary, I think those opportunities are somewhat limited. They're limited sometimes because of the job adverts that are out there, and I know that you're constantly challenging those adverts, which is good. And funnily enough, I literally had one today. A friend of mine works at a local rugby club, and they want 2 physios for the local rugby team, and they want pitch side cover. And I said, well, have you not thought about a graduate sports therapist, and that they haven't got a clue what they are. And then I was thinking, well, is this limited to sports therapy? And then it's the same in osteo. It's the same in osteopathy as well. Nobody knows what the heck an osteopath is. Nobody really knows what the osteopathy degree entails either. And we also, in a lot of job opportunities and also academic opportunities to progress, are limited because we're not HCPC registered. We have a different register. So, but it's through the fault, I think, not of the, I mean, in academic terms, the guys that run the course, they know what an osteopath is, but the administration of the university don't. They haven't got a clue. And those are the guys that put the adverts together for the courses or whatever it is. So we have a real issue with sports therapy and osteopathy, I think, with actually saying what we are and what we do. And I was just kind of mulling over it, and I was thinking, well, is it because of the disparity between the delivery in the universities? Because I know that the Society of Sports Therapists, to be a graduate sports therapist, you have to meet the SST competencies, and your degree has to do those things. But then, depending on the team that you have delivering the qualification, you will then also get additional modules in their specialist areas. So there we have a kind of disconnect, because there are some universities that offer more sports psychology stuff, some more sports nutrition alongside the sports therapy. So again, is that beneficial, or does it muddy the water a little bit? And I don't know, I think with physio, everybody knows what you cover in physiotherapy, and they have that nailed down. And in other therapies, I don't think we have that. So that was my little rant. Sorry.
Could we say that this is not just our industry related problem? If we look at the amount of people who go to university now, compared to when I went to school, it's massive. The numbers are massive. We're turning out far too many sports therapists, far too many sports scientists, far too many of every graduate. One of my sons did a business enterprise degree, but there are no business enterprise jobs. He's now self-employed and he does some work in my clinic. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a wider problem, but specifically, what we need to do as stakeholders in the industry, we need to focus on the sports therapists and try and find some opportunities for them. And it was interesting that Dan comes from a sports science background and then went to towards the sports therapy. A lot of the people who I talk to on a daily basis, they do sports therapy degree. Now, if I told you that 65% of graduates don't work in the industry after 18 months, there is a fundamental failing. So what they're doing, those graduates, they're staying in academia, they're going on to do a sports science or a sports and exercise medicine master's. And some are even going on then when they've got the science-based degree, because it's easier to get onto the physio masters with a science-based degree rather than the therapy-based. So everybody is being funneled towards an ever-decreasing employment market in physiotherapy. Mm-hmm. Now, Scott's put a really valid point on there, and I remember having this conversation with him that, I was contacted by a physio who said, look, I need somebody to work in my clinic. I'm rushed off my feet. I want them to do the same as what I do. Can a graduate sports therapist do that? I said, well, no, because we're not physiotherapists, we're graduate sports therapists. So there are different occupational competencies, etc. Yeah, but I can't afford to employ a physio, so I want to employ a graduate sports therapist to do exactly what I do, but pay them half the money. Mm-hmm. And I said, you can't have it both ways. If you want to employ somebody to do exactly the same as you do, employ a physio. If you want somebody to take on a different sort of remit within your clinical practice, employ a graduate sports therapist and let them focus on the rehabilitation and the sport specific stuff. Let the physios do the activities for daily living and orthopedic rehab and post-operative rehab, etc.
Yeah.
So that there's a lot going on in our industry, but we're in 2021. Okay, if you believe what people put on their websites, the industry's been around for over 30 years. But in that 30 years, how has the industry developed? Yes, we're putting more people through, but we're all competing for the same amount of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's one of my major concerns. And this is why I'm trying to change the occupational competencies. But you brought up a very valid point, Mike, that, if you are part of an accredited degree, there are a nucleus of occupational competencies, but then it depends who the course lead is, what their bias is. And if it's a strength and conditioning bias, you're going to get more S&C. Mm-hmm. If it's a hands-on bias, you're going to get more hands-on. So I don't think there's any parity. I don't think there's any standardization. And I don't think that helps us.
Mm, yeah, I agree. I think that is a massive part that it's the mixed messages, I think, that we send across. And I think Julia Hartley put a message the other day, it wasn't this evening, but was saying about the fact that again this comes back to the regulation question, or whether it's necessary for that, with the fact that you can do several weekends of a course and call yourself a sports therapist and then do 3 years at university or do a master's degree, and it's it's the same title. So that is then muddied, but then equally patients don't know that they don't know about title. They call me physio all the time, and I have to correct them. Not that they're not bothered, but they everything's all physio. So it's we definitely need to work on branding what we're good at, and targeting that market. But then we've got the problem is if you work in private practice, you then limit your market, because in private practice, I mean, the amount of sports people I now see, probably about 5-10% of my clinical practice load. So it's not the area that seek us. Yeah, and then we've got the issue about well, if that's not what we're trained to do, but those are the people that we see, then are the competencies right to set us up for work? And it's that kind of chicken and egg situation, isn't it? I'm just really conscious because I've got Beth has arrived. So Beth, we're going to bring you in now. There we go.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for joining us. Just give us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and what you do now. So it looks as if you're in your own clinic at the moment.
Yes. So I'm a graduate sports therapist. I left uni in 2014. I went into somebody else's private practice and sport at the same time. Mm-hmm. Only amateur level rugby, where I still work now, just for a different club. But a couple of years ago, decided I wanted to do it on my own. When you work with somebody else, I found that you're very limited with what you're permitted to do within clinic. There were time constraints that I weren't happy with, and other bits and pieces. So 2 years ago, I set up my own clinic, and then finally went full time at my own clinic, or nearly full time, just before Christmas, which was wonderful timing with the second lockdown. So it's been an interesting year. But yeah, I think the point you're making about sort of the industry as a whole are really good, because when you go to uni, you're always told, oh, you take with your degree, you can then go on and work for Premiership rugby teams, football teams, whatever. You'll be the person running on with the bag. You'll be working with all these elite sportsmen. When in reality, like you say, good 5-10% of my clinic might be sportsmen, but then a lot of them aren't. They're general members of the public that want help with an issue. Mm-hmm. And especially recently with COVID, if anything, it's funneled more people towards us because people can't get the help that they need on the NHS at the moment, because there were backlogs before this all started, and now it's even worse. So I think people are seeking out private practice a bit more. But it's like you say, I get called a physio every day, and I'm like, well, I'm not a physio. We're not the same thing.
Yeah.
To the general public, as far as they're concerned, can you fix my knee? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, yes, but we might do things slightly differently, and we might take you slightly further. And I think, like you say, there needs to be a bit more sort of clarification, not just within the industry, but to the public as a whole, and what we are and what we do.
Yeah. No, I agree. Maybe that's something we need to look at, Gary. Maybe like a kind of some kind of clarity campaign or something that we do for members, so that our message is really clear.
Yeah, I think what I've tried to do with Matt's help on these web chats is to look at the periphery of our industry, because that's where a lot of us seem to be working. We don't work, as you both identified. 5 to 10% of our core clients are sports people. Even though there might be, there's the recreational athletes that may come in, do the occasional run. I still class them as a sports person, but fundamentally we're competing for the same amount of marketplace as the physios, the osteos, the chiros, etc. And what I find a little bit conflicting, in the industry, is that during the various lockdowns, as I've said, many occasions, I spent the whole of lockdown speaking to members on a daily basis, ringing up at least 20 to 25 of them, seeing how they're doing, seeing if there's anything I could do to support them. And the overriding message came from a good percentage of graduate sports therapists, is that we want extra recognition for our academic skills. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be, lumped in with massage parlors, and I know that we've had this discussion before, that we're now sports and massage therapists, but they didn't want to be lumped in with the more holistic treatments, if you like, or more holistic therapists. And yet, when you go and look on these people's websites, a graduate sports therapist, the first thing that you see is sports massage. We are giving the wrong message, in my opinion. And what we should do, and I've said this hundreds of times, our title should be what it says on our certificate. So if we are a sports massage therapist on our certificate, you've got a certificate in sports massage, you're a sports massage therapist. If you've got a diploma in soft tissue therapy, then you're a soft tissue therapist. And if you've got a degree in sports therapy or sports rehabilitation or sports science, that's your respective title. Mm-hmm. So I think as an industry, we need to do more. We need to tidy up our act a little bit. I think there are several conflicts of interest within the stakeholders of the industry which are not helping. I'm even named as the chair of another organisation which I left nearly 9 years ago, but they still keep the website up to try and damage my reputation. And I'm not going to go public about why I left them. It's just I don't want any involvement with them. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to support any application for regulation because they're linked to a training provider which provides soft tissue training courses, mm-hmm. Which are, some people say, outdated. I'm not going to say whether the courses are good or bad. That's not my job. But they are still teaching a level 5/level 6, which bears no relevance to the industry standards, the education standards, should I say. So, they're not going to vote for regulation. And it's on the HCPC website. You can go to the minutes of all the meetings that discuss all of the applications. And the very first one said that there should be a consultation with BASRAT and the SMA, who were classed as the other stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Now, that consultation never took place, and it never will. And BASRAT have now moved on, and they're doing some really great things for graduate sports rehabilitators with their international recognition programs and their accredited register. I don't happen to agree with accredited registers myself.
I think we've lost him.
No.
He was in full flow. Oh, he's back again. Sorry, Gary, we missed the last bit. You didn't agree with accredited registers, was where
no. I was an advisor to an accredited register, and it was launched back in 2010, and it was all about standards. but quite quickly it became about bums on seats, because it costs 20 grand a year to maintain a professional standards authority accredited register. So it quickly opened up. Instead of just being about sports therapists, it became about nutritional therapists. It became about sports massage therapists. So I didn't think that the holistic route, that the CNHC took and the FHT are taking, to have an accredited register for more holistic treatments, I don't think is the right way forward. That's my personal opinion. And I just think it adds a level of bureaucracy.
Yeah, fair enough. No, thank you, Gary. Dan, when you first started, Dan, what did you find that you were doing the most? Because Gary's just mentioned there about sports massage as being the thing. Did you go down that route as well? Was that how you kind of pushed your business initially and then kind of morphed it over time, or how did you start things?
So I think, sorry, Mike, just before I answer that, I think on a global level, there are fundamental issues, aren't there? And sports therapists need to be branded as a sports therapist. Sports massage therapists need to be branded as sports massage therapists. 100% agree with that. But on a micro level, as individuals, I just think we all need to do what we're good at, do what you're qualified to do, and just do it well. I see so much chat on the internet about, like a sports massage therapist not being respected the same as a physio. Like, a sports massage therapist is not a physio, but it doesn't mean to say that you're not a fucking good sports massage therapist. Do you know what I mean? Sorry the language. Just do it really, really well. There's people in my town who are massage therapists who have got businesses worth a lot of money, who are helping lots and lots of people. And they're not claiming to be anything they're not, but they're doing a really, really good job at doing that.
Yeah. And
I think on a micro level, do what you're trained to do and just do it really well. Do it with a smile face rather than complaining about the industry so much.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think one thing that gets me is we've got all these different levels, and it's been born out of academic pomposity, really. And we don't even know what they are in the industry. We'll struggle with what do you do on it? If you've never done the course or never taught the course, you don't really know what is entailed in a level 3 sports massage course, or a level 4 or a level 5, and then how that differs then to degree level. And unless you've been on that pathway, we have no idea. So how the heck are the general public or other professions looking in gonna know exactly what everything? They're all just going to kind of lump us into the same bracket. And I think that's I think you're right. I think there needs to be something that we do to distinguish between each of the qualifications. I've just got to put this up because this is one of my old students, Ireland. He's written something massive here. Hold on. Let me just see if I can read it there. So if we know that there aren't many job opportunities, why isn't more done to create opportunities? Why not have a business module on the course to help create more clinics, very similar to how chiros do it? And then when you get the patients through the door, then you can educate patients on what a sports therapist is and what we do. And this is how we grow sports therapy, in my opinion. Yeah, good. Very good. Well, you've got your head screwed on, Ireland. Obviously, whoever your lecturer was a good one. What's your how have you made your business a success now, Beth? What have you done to help promote you and get your and do you employ other sports therapists as well? So
no, not at the moment.
Couple of questions in one.
In regard, one of the biggest things I've always struggled with is marketing. Because again, at uni, yes, you do the clinical side of everything. They'll teach you the sports trauma, you do a bit of taping, whatever else. And then it's off you go into the real world. You have no idea how to run a business. You don't know how taxes work. You don't know how anything works, so it's a massive learning curve. And even though I've set my own clinic up, it's a case of, well, all right, you've set it up. How do you actually then run it? I can do the therapy side of it. How do you then do the business side of it? So I definitely agree that doing a business module on courses would help the industry, because more people would then be inclined to stay if they know what they're doing. I live in a little village, essentially, so I started doing a lot on Facebook and just sharing it to little villages. There's another sports therapy clinic up the road in the main town, and it's good. So I was like, well, how do I compete with that? How do I do something a bit differently? So you target the smaller little independent villages that want to support local business. And that's actually served me quite well recently. So that's massively helped. I've tried adverts in, there's a local magazine that goes around here, and it just advertises local businesses, which is great if you read them, but 90% of people don't. I did chuck an advert in it once. I got one person from it, so it did pay for itself, but I don't think it's something I'd do again. I think one of the most beneficial things I did was that I got in with a local running club. I had a chat, bumped into them by accident at the running show, so I could actually have a chat in person as opposed to just by email, and that helped. So you get one or two, and then it is just word of mouth, but asking people to write reviews and send referrals in is great, and sharing people's stories I found to be quite good.
Brilliant.
But I think most recently one of the best things I did was get an accountant, because doing it myself was driving me insane. So that helps as well. But it's these things just aren't necessarily covered in degrees and stuff. So I can't speak at a college level, but it certainly wasn't covered in my degree.
No, I think it was a module in the degree that I taught on, but it was phased out. So I think back when I started teaching around about 2012, I think that was the last year they ran it, and then they phased it out, which was a real shame, because I think it's a real key, because if you don't have that access to a sports team, which is what you're geared up for, then you have to go into private practice if you want to be a sports therapist. And then, like you say, you've no idea where to start. There's some really good comments here as well. So Andy Caldwell, hey Andy, evening. Business planning, marketing and social media training, massively under recognized. Big part of launching and maintaining a successful clinic, and just be the best you can be, irrespective of your title, and the rest tends to take care of itself. I think that's a really good point. I think it is irrespective of the title. But as we've all alluded to, nobody knows what we do anyway. That they all call us something else. So as you said, Dan, just be the best that you can be.
Sorry, Mike, and that's it. Although they might not know our titles, they know the difference between what helps them and what doesn't help them, and what was a good service and what wasn't a good service.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to be realistic as well. I mean, I don't know how you guys, how long it took you guys to grow your business, but when I very first started, I was doing it part-time. I was doing it mobile with a couch, going around people's houses, usually referrals from physio, and they go, oh yeah, someone needs a rub down. And that's how I started. So I would do sports massage and build that up a few times a week. Then I rented a room in one part of the city, started to build up that whilst I was doing another job as well, full-time. So so this was on a part-time basis. And then I got another room, and then another one, and then it got too busy. So I had to drop my full-time job down to part-time hours. And then it gradually kind of like shifted then across into the therapy side. And that process took about 5 years. And I don't know what the kind of timescale was for you guys, but I think sometimes, if, like you said, Gary, at the very beginning, about someone kind of hanging up their polo top a few months in, it takes some slog over some years. It's not just going to land in your lap if you're going to work on your own. And even working within a business, it takes time to generate your own client base. What was your kind of experience, Beth, with kind of growing your side of the business? How long did it take? What kind of things did you do?
It was a bit of a pain. I mean, when I got really lucky, and ultimately that's one of the biggest things. One of the things I found talking to friends that had done the course and then no longer work in the industry, they couldn't find somewhere else to work, and they didn't feel confident enough to do it on their own. I happened to know somebody that was working in a clinic that had not a lot of notice to go and to start lecturing. I hadn't even technically finished my degree, but it was, oh, would you mind coming in and covering for a week while the other girl's on holiday? And then I stayed there for 5 years. But I was at a point where I didn't have a car, so that was an expense I didn't have. I lived at home with my parents, so I paid a little bit of board, but not a lot. And I was in a position where I could earn pittance essentially to start with, and get a little bit more money coming in, working in a pub a couple of nights a week. And you do scrape by, and it's took a long time to get to this point. So I left uni in 2014. I'm still not completely full time, but at the minute I'm working 6 days a week, and 2 days a week are in a gym, just helping out at the moment, just so I've still got some income. Admittedly, the last year hasn't really helped anything. I was hoping to be slightly more in here more as opposed to working elsewhere than I am at the minute. But working 6 days a week isn't for everybody. If you've got family commitments, financial commitments, building it up bit by bit, if you haven't got to go back to your family, then you can do it. But if you've got a partner or kids or a dog you've got to look after, it's just not feasible for a lot of people to do.
Yeah,
I think that is a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage that the industry is very flexible. I do simple anecdotal research by using a tally bar, 5-bar gate thing, and over 75% of STA members have another job. Okay, less than 10% work full time in the industry. A lot of people can have a family break or a career break, a sabbatical, whatever, and then come back to the industry. Louise Akers just said there that she's, a long break, and 2 years in, she's happy to say she can stop a full-time job and concentrate on this. But the flexibility is a plus point. But, I go back to the figures of 65% fail, within 18 months. There was a comment earlier on that only 6% of somebody's course actually went on to work in the industry, and that's horrifying. And I don't think we do enough, and I don't think it's enough to have a business module on a degree course. Some of the CVs that I get sent through on a daily basis, or some of the surveys I get sent through, on the professionalism and ethics module, it's just based on outdated rhetoric from the industry stakeholders. So we need to do a better job. I started, I came from an ex-military and then a fitness industry background. I worked as a sports remedial masseur for quite a few years before I went and took progressive training. And, my academic qualifications are outside of this industry, more in education. So I know a lot about the levels 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm horrified by some of the standards that are out there. And you touched on it before, Mike, that there is no relevance to the numerical levels other than a marketing advantage, that in my opinion. I don't know what the way forward is. For people, I'm going to support them. I think the social media marketing is a big way forward. I'm encouraging people to make a habit of posting on social media, to have a business page, and 80% of the time, post information, whether that's a link to tagging a client in for example, Primal Movement Solutions video on lower back mobility. If they've come to your clinic, I don't think it's worth you doing your own videos at this point in time when there are so many professionals out there doing it, and they're more than happy for you to share their resources and reference them properly. Here's a great video from Primal Movement Solutions on lower back mobility. The guy's Gary Lewis, always got some great content on YouTube and Facebook. Here it is, Dave. This is what I was talking to you about, and tagging them, because that's all he does. He's a remedial exercise remedial instructor in the military, and his content's fantastic. So if we start putting a story on, so it might be start on a Monday and we're talking about lower limb injuries, in football, and we might then talk about on a Tuesday, we might talk about medial collateral ligament injuries, we might talk about an ankle sprain, we might talk then about a toe injury, for example. So you're creating a story, a theme going through, and then on the fifth one, why not book an appointment to come and see me? So you've created some content with some interest. You've given some helpful tips about if you are suffering with medial collateral ligament injury and you're looking to return to sport. Here's a really good proprioception video you can try.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're then on the fifth day, if you're unsure about what you need to achieve or what stage you need to be at, why not book in with me? You know, we can go through a full assessment of your skill and ability level now, and we can set some short, medium, and long-term goals moving forward. That's where our strength is as a sports therapist. It's facilitating recovery. We're not fixing people; we're facilitating them getting better.
Definitely. Well, I've got. I guess it's because of my background really, but because of teaching on a sports therapy degree, I know what sports therapists do. I know what they're good at, and I've got 3 of them working in my clinic, and but they've all got that little niche that they don't all do the same thing. We've got one guy who focuses more on, well, in fact, he's now doing a strength and conditioning degree because he wanted to go down that route more. We've got one guy who focuses on kind of MMA because that's his passion. And then the other guy is more general kind of health and fitness. And we've kind of picked the team because I know what, like I say, I know what sports therapists can do. So I know what patients they can see, but then they've also got the support of the clinical team. So we've got 2 physios and myself working there as well. So if they get anybody who they really struggle with, and they've got someone to refer on to within the team as well. Do you think that might be a bit of a barrier for some guys starting out on their own, especially like Beth, you said, you're in a little village kind of in the middle of nowhere. Is that been a scary process for you? Have you got support if there is someone that you feel is outside of your remit, or that you work with someone that would then refer people to you because of what you do? Is there a two-way relationship that you've got?
Not really, if I'm being honest. But I've only lived in the area for a couple of years, so it is still quite new. Yeah. One thing that has helped me a lot ultimately is, being on the STA page. I'm on part of Sports Injury Fix. There's the physio support page that got set up during COVID. I know full well, like, if I've got a patient that I'm stuck with, I can post on one of those pages and people will come back and help and give you support.
Brilliant.
So I found this side of it massively, massively helpful. And I don't think I'd be as far forward as I am without it. Because it's like someone said, having a safety net. Yes, we're talking financially, but actually clinically, having someone behind you to back you up. When I worked in the other clinic, the one thing I did like was that if I was struggling with something, I could go and have a chat with one of the other therapists that was there and get a different perspective on things.
Yeah.
So I did like that. There are relationships I'd like to build up in the area, but at the moment, unfortunately, I haven't particularly got anybody else local.
It was interesting, Beth, that when you spoke earlier, you mentioned the sports therapist working up the road, and you said, how the hell can I compete with that?
Yeah.
I challenge you to compete with it, but to set up an alliance, because you may have because I know that you've got a lot of first aid training, in your background. They might have a very sports specific expertise. So you could trade off skills, cross referring. It's about building networks. And all the communities you mentioned, the physio support group from Gemma, the STA group, it's all about building communities, so that we don't. And I noticed Mike's ears picked up when safety net came up, Mike, and we'll save that on for another day. But we do need that. To go back to Mike's point, sometimes working in that multidiscipline clinic is advantageous, but sometimes it's very limiting. You might have a graduate sports therapist that all they do for 5 years is a bit of soft tissue work. The direct, this person needs a rub here, this person needs a rub there. And sometimes, and then if you want to move on, there's probably contractual limitations and restrictions about where you can work and how you get your own clients and things like that. So, it's horses for courses. We're all different. So some it will suit. I think my frustration is that, from the graduate program, it's heavily internship based. The recommendations, so when you finish your degree, your insurance is going to be limited for 18 months. Go and get an internship to get experience. And what that's done in turn is it's devalued the industry further, so that the people who are using the interns will never pay what we are worth. Because they've always got a steady stream of people who are doing the third year looking for placement hours, or they're willing to work for 15 grand a year. And one question I was asked last week was, how much do I pay a graduate sports therapist? I said, you pay them what they're worth. And they said, yeah, but I've got no idea. And I said, well, in private practice, if just generally speaking, for ease of maths, you did 20 clients a week, and your price is 40 quid. That's 800 quid a week. You extrapolate the figures and it works out at 40 grand a year with a couple of weeks off at Christmas. You pay your 45%, business cost, if you like. You've got 26 grand clear. Now, for a clinic to employ somebody and give them 26 grand a year clear, then by the time you've got the holiday pay, the statutory sick pay, the national insurance contributions, you're probably talking about over 30 grand. So, people are looking to get, a graduate sports therapist working in their clinic and paying them about 12 grand a year after all of the, the employer expenses, and that devalues the industry, but it's the same in every graduate role that I mentioned before. When you come out and you're a media graduate, you won't be earning the big bucks. You'll be working on an internship, and you'll be doing some graphic design in the worst office in the company for a pittance. And I think that's just a measure of how we produce too many graduates.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was the same for me. I started doing because obviously you've seen me in real life, Gary. Most people have just seen me on the internet for the last year and a half. But I'm a basketball fan, obviously, because of my height, as you know.
I mean, you're 6'7", Mark. You've got on TV.
And I got the opportunity to look after the Birmingham Bullets basketball team, and that was like a dream. It was completely free. I didn't get paid a penny, but it was something that I really enjoyed anyway. And seeing all the guys coming over from the States and training in Birmingham was really good. But then I could use that logo on all of my marketing, so and that then gave me that that credibility within the marketplace.
Yeah. Just as an aside to that, to expand on that, I used to train on the same court as the Birmingham Bullets. Their court, when Channel 4 used to have the Monday night basketball, their court was kept and stored in a hangar at Nuneaton at Bramcote Barracks, and I played for the Army at basketball, and we used to train there. I was based there, so I had a couple of training sessions with the Birmingham Bullets. But yeah, I played with enthusiasm, shall we say.
One-on-one, mate, when we get to the next Therapy Expo. Good. So we've got a few other comments here just coming through. So Daniel, the opposite to the internship is potentially the osteopathic way. Sorry, but things are in the way of my screen, where you qualify thinking you're fully formed, work for yourself, and self-directed, but actually knowing very little. It's so true. I mean, did you guys have working clinics when you were doing your degree program? Yeah. What kind of patients did you see? Because I know the kind of population that my guys saw. Just to be interesting to see what you guys saw as well. So Dan, who would you usually see in the student clinic?
We would see anyone, Mike, to be totally honest. I think when you first start out, you'd see fellow students, people who you knew pretty well, just to build some confidence, just to work on a systematic approach of your assessment and your treatment. And then I suppose once you've earned your stripes and you develop these skills, they kind of let you loose with vetted outside customers.
Okay. Yeah.
Who will come in. Again, they've been pre-vetted, so nothing too complicated. I suppose to build you up. And I think the university I did mine at I think clinically they were really good. They were really, really strict on hours spent in clinic. They didn't let you off with anything. And I think that's probably the most valuable part of my master's degree was, aside from learning academia, was actual time spent in clinic.
Yeah.
Yeah, like anyone and everyone, and again, that was a really good learning curve. Old, young, male, female, athletic, non-athletic, literally anybody and everybody. And the more, and I say this a lot to people, the more you put yourself out there, the more you get, the more you want to learn, the more you will learn.
Yeah.
And I think our small cohort on the Masters, again, I'm probably pretty fortunate that I was around slightly older people. Like, we were all mature students doing a Master's degree. Bit of life experience. We all worked full time. We all had some involvement in the industry anyway. And like I said, we all tried hard, and any opportunity that came up, we took it.
Yeah,
and on a personal level, any opportunity, and literally anything that came my way, whether it was paid or not paid, I took it.
Yeah, brilliant. And
actually, sorry,
go on.
I actually like the internship. I think it's a way in. It's almost like being an apprentice, isn't it? Where Daniel Gerber, like, it's a great point. I think it would have been really dangerous to say, right, is your master's degree? Now piss off and go and earn some money and pretend to be the master of science that it says on a bit of paper, when really I didn't know anything. I literally didn't know anything. But people assume because you've got a master's of science written down, the assumption is you're a clever little shit. But I really wasn't. So I think the internship allows you to be around people as long as you're in a good cohort or a good group of people or a good team.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine, again, not just saying this because you're here, Mike, I imagine working with the likes of yourself, you get great support, you get well looked after, and that's the difference, isn't it? If you're in and around people who care about you and want to look after you, and it's not just taking a piss out of an internship.
Yeah. I think that's a good part. I mean, I'm a teacher. I'm qualified as a teacher. I know how to teach people. And if you go to another clinic for an internship and you get someone who's a clinician, they might be a very good clinician, but they haven't got a clue how to teach. Yeah. And you won't get anything out of that placement because they don't know how to deliver that information to you. And that's the thing. It's all very well having an internship, but you've got to get something out of it. You can't just be the person that, like you said, Gary, just does the rub downs and does a bit of cleaning. It's got to be valuable. Otherwise there's just no point. What kind of patients did you see, Beth, at your uni to kind of set you up when you graduated?
So the way our uni did it, you had to do your 100 hours clinical placement within the clinic, supervised by one of the lecturers, and then you had a placement with a sports team. Mm-hmm. Now, some people got lucky and they got an external sports team, so they had somebody to follow. Mm-hmm. Whether they were a graduate sports therapist or not, there was somebody else they could learn from. I was given a kit bag and told that my clinical placement was the Uni Rugby League seconds team. You'll be up at the sports fields on Wednesday, off you go. And it was pretty much a baptism of fire. The first injury I ever had to deal with was a French exchange student who shattered his clavicle from one end to the other and promptly forgot how to speak English. So that was interesting. But throughout, I never felt like I had support there. There was somebody in the main building if you ever needed extra help, but realistically, you were put out on your own. Mm. Now, if I did an internship while I was at uni, so I had, some financial support coming in, whether through my student loans, and I could do that alongside my placement hours in the clinic while I was still studying, that would have been fine. Yeah. And I think I might have got more out of it than I did. So I've always said this. It's the one thing I always regretted is I've never had anyone to work underneath, which sounds stupid, but you don't have that ability to learn from other people and see how to do things differently. You muddle through, you work out how to do it yourself. Yeah. But every sports team I've ever worked for, I have been the medical team. There hasn't been anybody else. I think that's why I've ended up doing so much sort of first aid training and sports trauma stuff, because there is literally nobody else to turn to except for you. So I wanted to make sure I was really hot on that and I didn't ultimately let people down, because in extreme situations, people can end up with disabilities or worse. So that was one thing for that. In regards to my in-clinic placement, a lot of the people we saw were my rugby league team that were broken on a Saturday, on Wednesday. So a lot of the people I saw at that point were my own age. And because most of us were sort of, 2021, we had a couple that were 23, 24, but everyone was the same age. All the students were roughly the same age. We had a couple of lecturers that came in, but it was never something that the uni pushed. So we had a very, very limited group of people that we ended up working with. So it was a massive, when I went into private practice and started working, in proper adult rugby, as it were, that was a huge difference. I've gone from treating, 19-year-olds to sort of 50-year-old blokes that probably should have stopped playing rugby years ago, but would have none of it and had every single joint in their body taped up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an interesting transition, and I think that there did need to be more support at that level. And I also think that's what put quite a few people off in my cohort to leave the industry, because it was, we've got experience treating these people with these injuries, but then if you've got as you get older, a lot of people have more comorbidities and more severe conditions. They just didn't know what to do.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Sorry, Gary, go on.
No, I was just going to say that, I suppose my criticism of internships was based on parts of what Dan said are really true, that internships do provide a valuable learning experience. But when you're learning, and Beth picked it up as well, you need somebody to teach you. And you said it, Mike, you're a teacher. So I think internships have just become a way of, okay, just go and work with that sports team. And there's no supervision. And I think that's what we need. Talking about sort of mentorship, I suppose, for people who are listening on the podcast now, STA members, we, in our file section of our social media group, we have a buddy list. So if something happens, a traumatic injury occurs and you want to sort of offload to somebody, then we have got a comprehensive list of people with different specialities. So that can be accessed by STA members in the file section, as I said. But talking again about mentorships, Andy Caldwell, who was commenting earlier, he's one of my sort of go-to people. He runs a really good podcast himself, which I'm sure he'll put the link in. I was talking to him recently about he wanted somebody to work in his clinic, so if you're in the Stafford area, get in touch with Andy, see if he's filled that place, because you will not learn from anybody better. And you obviously know him as well as I do, Mike. He's a great guy with superb knowledge, and he is a great teacher.
No, it's good to have people like that as part of the STA. Really, that support network, I think, is second to none. I think I've got just a little message here from Chris Kitson. So you need someone that doesn't want to specifically teach you their way. I think that's really good point. And something that I had a few conversations with some of the other lecturers when I was teaching at the uni was what are we trying to do when we're teaching these guys on the sports therapy degree? So are we teaching them to be sports therapists, or are we teaching them to be critical thinkers? And the sports therapy is a kind of byproduct to make them into critical thinkers, because we knew that some of them weren't going to go into sports therapy. Their heart wasn't in it. And I don't know why they chose the degree program in the first place. Some people, but some people you knew were going to go, to the top, because they were so committed, and that, like you, Dan, attending everything, and you knew that those guys were going to be good. So we kind of had to have this level ground where we go, right, we know some are going to make it, some aren't going to make it. So we need to make sure that they're very good critical thinkers, so then they can mold into whatever they want to be then after they graduate. And if they do want to go on and do an MSc in something, then fine, or even completely change career. So it's I think not having someone specifically teach their way. As a critical thinker, you'll be able to challenge that. And if if it sits outside the current evidence, because if you go into someone's practice where it's like back in the sort of archaic times, and the type of treatments that they're doing, you need to be able to question it and challenge it, and maybe not directly to them, because obviously you're on an internship or whatever you're doing, but in the back of your mind, you need to be thinking critically about it. And I think that's some of the key skills that a graduate sports therapists should have.
Yeah, and you also get.
Should we all?
Sorry, Gary.
Sorry, Dan. I'll come in on this point if I may.
Just
Should we
said
also
earlier-
then?
My fault. Sorry.
No, sorry. All I was going to say was on that then, Mike, if we are trying to produce critical thinkers, should we actually on the degree programs, should we be challenging what we're being told?
You should be. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the classic is with electrotherapy. It's still being taught as as a major module in a lot of university programs, and then you get outside of that environment, and nobody uses it, and the evidence against it is so stacked up, but then it's still taught as a major module.
Yeah, but that module, I suspect, is taught because it's still one of the occupational competencies for sports therapy. And you and I had a chat probably a year ago about, you asked me, how do I teach electrotherapy? And I say, well, what you've got to do, you've got to put the information out there, and then you put the information out there that challenges its efficacy, and say, this is what we thought, when this was, designed in 1980, this is what we think now. You make your own decisions on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Catherine's just made a good point here. So on degree programs, obviously you get the placements, but you don't get that on a diploma. So you finish your diploma and then you're in. You're expected to do hours, but it's not. They're not necessarily like an internship, like a placement, like you would get on a degree program. So I think that needs to change as well, I think, and maybe stipulating hours in certain working environments, so you get a broad range of experiences with degree programs and with diplomas. I think it should be the same for both.
On the STA accredited awards, the industry awards, we do stipulate that for each year that the person studies, they have to do 36 hours of case studies. 12 of them are taken in the community, 12 are taken them within the college sports team that Beth mentioned, and 12 of them are taken at events. So we organise events in the East Midlands where we can have people from diplomas and students and recently graduated, because it is such an important part of it. Interestingly, though, even though the awarding organisations may say there are 15 case studies enforceable, and the awarding organisations won't enforce them.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're just running over time, guys. I'm just conscious of time. So I think the question at the beginning was about the career options for graduate sports therapists, and I think we've got two successful graduate sports therapists here with us. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for letting us know how you started your journey and the kind of things you had to do, because I think people need to hear those things. So those people that are going to be doing their finals now and going to be graduating in September, they need to hear these things. I think it's some people do walk into those sports teams jobs, and that it's usually nepotism. It's usually who you know, not what you know. But if you want to start on your own in your own clinic, you need to start now, before you graduate. Put the feelers out, and then put your head down and get on with it, I think, and just keep going, and don't lose faith. It will come eventually. I mean, I had a clinic where it was just me at the beginning, and 8 years later we've got a team of nearly 10. So it takes time, and I've questioned sometimes why I've done it and the kind of things that I've done. But being on your own and being your own manager, you can make decisions really, really quickly. And if something's not working, you can change and do something else. But you've just got to put the graft in, I think. And like you said, Dan, as long as you do a good job, you look after people, And as you were saying as well, Beth, you get those repeat people back again. So I think there is hope for graduate sports therapists. I hope it doesn't put people off, that they can't just walk into a job. That there's a lot of opportunity out there. You just got to keep on looking. Hopefully.
Before we finish then, Mike, if I can, what we're doing with the web chats, we usually on a monthly basis, we host an STA update. So things that we didn't get to discuss tonight, which I'd like to discuss on the next one, if anybody wants to take part, is, the business model we as sports therapists employ. Now, there are a number of sports therapists who are going down a package route where, as part of your payment, for a month's worth of our expertise, you have a full assessment, and then you have 2 sessions a week for a month, so we can take you through the progressive exercise rehabilitation and all the advanced soft tissue skills that we have. Now that falls in line with some of the criticism, I suppose, that chiropractors get, where saying, I need to see you twice a week for the first 4 weeks, then we'll go to once a month as a maintenance. So if anybody does employ the, selling a package deal to people, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to come on and tell us all about that. And also, if anybody wants to come on and defend the single session business model as well. So, I'll see you once, I'll give you some stuff to do, and you ring me up when you feel you need to ring me up again. So they're the 2 avenues that we would like to discuss on the next one. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Have you got any final words of wisdom, Dan?
Go follow DA Human Mechanics. Let's get on it. That's how you do marketing, people.
Yeah. Going back to your point, is be the best you can be every day. Don't accept second best. Don't try and do enough to get by. Reach for the stars and you'll achieve more. So I like that, what you said earlier. Beth, any final words of wisdom for aspiring graduate sports therapists entering the employment market?
Keep pushing. Just because someone else did it differently to you doesn't mean your way isn't going to work. If it works for you, just do it. It's like we've gone back to, go back, do what you're good at, stick with it.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time as always. And we'll look forward to having Matt back next week. I can't remember who we've got. Oh, we're talking with an STA member, Debs, about endometriosis and how managing the condition may throw up some things that we need to be more aware of in clinic. Somebody may be presenting with a groin strain, or maybe presenting with constant lower back pain, and we've looked at men's pelvic health, women's pelvic health, and then Deb's one of our members. She's going to be talking about endometriosis and the problems that some of our female members may be experiencing, and what we can do to raise awareness and to signpost, I suppose, to the right referral pathway. So looking forward to that one.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Beth. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
You're listening to the Sports Therapy Association podcast. Let's talk about.